So I've cleaned the excess fiber off the big drum of my drum carder. The liquor in drum, honestly, I can never get it terribly clean, and it's less a function of the fiber than it is of the dried mud that comes out of even the cleanest fleece. Sheep live outside, they roll in the mud, and scouring does not really remove that. It can't. It simply cannot. When you open up the fibers, that is when the goop comes out. And by goop, I mean just little this is just dust. This is dried mud, and it's just a fact of life. In fact, when I tip up the drum carder, you will see more of it on the table that my carder lives on. And when I finish carding this batch of wool, it's going to be way, 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 way worse. So I just keep a cloth around to wipe off these surfaces all the time. I have not found a good way to get rid of it. And in fact, hopefully in the not too distant future, I will be able to acquire another drum carder. That new drum carder will be dedicated just to blending colors from commercial top. And this sweetheart of mine will be relegated to cleaning raw fleece. I think everybody, well, okay, me, is just going to be happier that way. And that's how I'm justifying getting a second drum carder. Okay, so I'm going to leave the camera where it is for this round so that you can see how the fiber feeds from this feeder in tray onto, here's a little second cut or NEP, NEPP as they're called, that I don't want in my batt ideally. And this will give you a better sense of how the drum carder does its thing. It's really cool. And I just put too much of I didn't fluff. So this is the fiber that I've already used on the lock pop. So it's nice and open. You can see through it as it goes through. In other words, you can just barely make out the texture of the liquor in tray. And I'm going to throw this little bit of merino in there too, because why not? It's not that big a deal. Okay, so that was all the little bits of fiber that I had used on the lock pop. Now I am just going to floof out some more, and again, put it in sideways because that helps open it out even more. And I'm just going to do a really small amount. It probably won't even register on my kitchen scale if I tried to weigh it. But I'm just going to do a really small amount. And again, the more care I take, even when I'm sampling, the happier I'm going to be when it comes to spinning, to sitting down at my spinning wheel. And I'm going to grab my burnishing brush and do just a little burnishing, because why not? And then I'm going to turn this off. Oh, and I have to wait till that strip, that cleaning strip on the big drum is in the right location. Otherwise, I can't get to it. I also have to remember to reverse the direction of my drum carder. And you can't see what I'm doing, but it's not very exciting. I am just removing this tiny amount of fiber from the big drum, and That's the patting sound you're hearing. That sounds a little bit like fingernails on a blackboard. That's the metal teeth of the carding cloth and the burnishing brush coming together. You may have noticed when I was feeding in the locks that I was not hanging on to them, and there's a good reason for that. You might think, oh, while the fiber is fed in, why not stretch it out with your fingers? Then it ends up getting wrapped around the liquor in brush or drum, and that's not good. That's kind of the opposite of what you want. What you want is for the fiber to go from this drum to this drum, and if that's not happening, you've got a problem. All right, so now that I've removed that small amount of fiber, oh, and see, you can see where I didn't clean off the brown well enough. So I'm just going to pick that right off. And if there's a little brown mixed in, that's okay. Lots of sheep are multicolor. So this is what the batt, whoops, looks like now. I zoomed in when I meant to zoom out. This is a common problem in my life. So this is, and again, if I had filled up this batch, if I had drum carded a complete batt, it would be a lot floofier and bigger. All right, so now I can, again, make sure that the drum carder is going forward and not backward, because that is not what I want. I just rip off a little bit of the batt. And again, what I want is to be able to kind of see the liquor in tray through the fiber. If the fiber is too thick, this process is not going to work very well. The belt will come off the wheels at the other side of the drum carder. Okay, and now off we go. And again, just separate it out a little bit and see this particular bit of fiber did not get a good enough opening up during the first pass. And I'm just feeding. And you can use a drum carder, as I mentioned earlier. You can use it to blend colors, even of commercial top, or, if you want. And it works really well. In fact, you get, oh my goodness, you get these beautiful heathered colors that you cannot create in any other way. Heathered yarn is made by mixing the colors in before the fiber becomes yarn, because after it becomes yarn, if you stick it in a dye pot, all the dye colors blend into each other. All right, so that was my second pass, just waiting for the strip to get to the right location on the drum carder before it disappeared down into the case of the drum carder. Okay, using my doffing brush and removing the batt. Okay. And this batt is more uniform. the fibers have been opened up. I didn't show this a side view of the first bat. I should have. It is more evenly distributed. So there is a thicker spot right here. But except for that thicker spot, and honestly, that is probably from the exact place where the liquor in met the bigger drum. This bat is gorgeous. So I can choose as the spinner to just tear a strip off and spin with a narrow strip. I could have dizzed off a rose wing from the bigger drum. I almost never do that because I can just tear it off. And I don't care if the strip is continuous. I could also choose to roll up the bat like it's a Little Debbie Swiss cake roll and spin it as from this end. And again, that would introduce even more air into the spun yarn. So these are all options, and let's see what I'm going to choose when I sit down. But I can also, before I leave this video, I want to say that the 10 minutes I spent making this bat, this is a lot more fiber that I'm going to have processed and ready to spin than 10 minutes at the lock pop. I tend to use my lock pop for breeds of sheep with much longer staple length, because it's so much fun to spin a long staple length breed from locks. But these shorter breeds, not so much. So spinning from the bat is almost certainly what I'm going to choose to do.